Okay, it is 3 o'clock. We're going to call to order the April 7th Board of Directors. All right, we're going to call to order the April 7th meeting of the Community Transit Board of Directors. And it is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor's proclamation. The meeting is recorded and being live streamed. And can the clerk please call the roll?
Chair, Councilmember Daughtry.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Frizzell. Mayor Marine.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Mead.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Merrill.
I'm here, thank you.
Mayor Nearing.
Here, thank you.
Thank you. Labor Representative Norton.
I'm here, Rachel, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Schweddy.
I'm present.
Thank you. And Councilmember Wright is excused. I see Mayor Frizzell, you've joined, yes? Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Here we do have a quorum. I'll briefly take roll call for alternates. Councilmember Gallagher.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Nearing. Councilmember Payne.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Thompson and Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Chair, that concludes roll.
Thank you very much, Rachel. All right, so for comments, we had 2 written comments received, and I know that they've been forwarded to the board. If you have not read those, you certainly can open those up and read them. And we have a verbal comment, and we have Joe Kunzler.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for calling me up so early, Mr. Chairman. Great to see everyone. A few thoughts this month. I'm assuming I am operating under the presumption that everyone read my written comments, because this is going to make my oral public comments go a lot faster. Operating under that presumption, you received a PDF file that basically told you, among other things, that I did some statistical analysis with the help of the Public Records Division, and which I appreciate as always. And there was like 60 days of incidents I got. There were 71 incidents of incivility of all kinds. And those incidences are all graphic and excusable. But there's a very important statistic I want to stress to the board when we have the agenda, when there's an agenda item discussion. I went ahead and called up the state crash data portal. That's data WSDOT collects on crash statistics. I asked the portal to run the crash report for buses versus motor vehicle drivers. Buses had 91 total crashes with no fatalities. And at worst, only 7 suspected minor injury. I know it's statistics, but I'm getting to my point. Motor vehicle drivers had 11,004 crashes total. That's a lot more than 91. They had, sadly, 36 fatal crashes, 227 suspected serious injury, and 1,000 suspected minor injury. So when we discuss the safety of buses versus public transit, number one, I appreciate your concern for my safety. I appreciate the blue blitz on Swift I'm hearing about, because this summer I intend to take Swift up to my hotel from Seafair. So deeply appreciate that, and we'll get to why my different background. But I want part of this conversation, please, a realization that buses are dramatically safer than motorists, especially when transit operators are properly supported equally by politicians and police. And I think you'll see that in today's presentation, which I went over. I at some point have to bring up the fact I have an Everett Transit background. And I just wanted to say this and get it over with. I ask that when you have discussions around transit, when you have concerns about attention, when you have concerns about this, and that you ask yourself the following question between now and November 2024. Is this matter going to help us merge with Everett Transit, or is this matter going to distract from that? Because if you distract from that, you could be giving the people who want to undo all the hard work of folks so much smarter and stronger than this mediocre white male. If you want to flop about things like open government issues, attention, this is not the time. We need to get this merger done. And that needs to be the focus, not me flopping about, what a board committee is, or whether it should be open meeting or not. So that's going to be the focus of my outreach to you between now and November of 2024. And that's my promise to you as a nation. And I will conclude with that thought. And I want to thank again the staff of Community Transit for your care and your concern for the safety of all transit riders. But just please make sure to stress to the general public how dramatically safer it is to take transit than ride a personal vehicle. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope we give you some time back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunzler.
Did we lose the chair?
I think we lost the chair. But he'll be back.
How do you lose a chair? I mean, he was sitting in it.
I could be.
All right, let's go ahead and I'll help out with this until he gets back. The next thing on the is there any verbal comments from anybody in the area of Zoom for the CT board? We show anybody raising their hand for comments, Rachel?
We do have one. We have Sherry Longenecker Daly, who's raised her hand and would like to provide comments. So we'll get her access to her microphone here. Just still take one moment, please.
Joe, did you find your chair?
Was it something I said?
Yeah, we lost your chair. We were just...
God. Interestingly, I could hear you the whole time.
Oh, is that right?
Oh.
Okay.
So, Chair Marine, we do have Sherry Longenecker Daly, who's joined for comments.
Right. All right, Sherry. Go ahead and unmute and go ahead.
I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I just want to say, for the 3 times that I've come to the board, I've been pretty hard on you guys. But one thing, since I spoke to you last month, I noticed that each one of you really took it serious and have been a huge part in helping. As I drive 99 every night, I see the shelters are cleaned up a little bit better. I mean, nothing's perfect, of course, but it is a lot better. I called the other day for somebody making a home in our shelter. By the time I completed my round trip, there was already transit there talking to them. So being proactive is always the first step. And I just want to say thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sherry, very much. I know that we take it very seriously. You've got a good board here. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak to the board? Just raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, press *9. And we will give that a few seconds there. Otherwise, we will move forward with our meeting. Rachel, are you seeing anybody?
Chair, I don't see anyone.
Okay. All right, great. Let's go ahead and move to our presentations. We have our first 2021 Employee Excellent Awards, CEO Ildren Fritz and past chair, Councilmember Daughtry.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We have a full and action-packed agenda today, and I'm delighted to be able to start off by highlighting our 2021 Employee Award recipients. We have this great tradition at Community Transit where we take a pause at the beginning of every year and reflect on the prior year. and ask for nominations for awardees from across the organization. And it's particularly important as we get to the end of a pandemic, recognizing how much employees have gone above and beyond to continue to deliver quality, safe service every day since March of 2020 all the way through the present. To really take a pause and stop, let the merry-go-round slow for a minute and observe and recognize those tremendous efforts. So a couple weeks ago, the executive leadership team presented awards for 2021 within the organization. I want to emphasize that these nominees come from their peers. So this is a peer-to-peer recognition. Employees calling each other out for exemplary work, for particularly high performance, for going out of their way to help, for responding when needed, just really important recognition from employee to employee. So the executive leadership team gets to deliver those awards, but it really is important to note that these are employees, coworkers recognizing each other. So we were able to start with 12 Excellence Award winners from throughout the agency, and I'll tick through their names real quickly. Melissa Anderson, Assistant HR Manager, Jeff Andrews, Dispatch Supervisors, Art Brawl, who's our Customer Care Manager. And you can see their pictures here. Ryan Chase, Procurement Specialist, Joni Jensen, Dispatcher, Bryce Larson, Lead Journey Body Mechanic, keeps those buses looking great. Rita Pilardo, an Employee Development Supervisor. She's out there mentoring and leading every day. Christopher Silvera, one of the key players in planning and delivering our excellent SWIFT network, including the upcoming Orange Line. Richard Staub, a Transit Applications Administrator in IT, who does more to keep us up and running than you could possibly imagine. Sonia Thorkeldson, Van Pool Safety Risk Specialist. She's the heart and soul behind the Van Go program. Lisa Whitney, the coach operator, who's been out there every day, day in, day out, modeling the best in customer service for her coworkers. And then Greg Stamiatu, who is our capital program manager and is overseeing construction with his teams of all of our facilities improvements. So that's 12 individuals whose combined efforts really made a difference for us and our success during 2021, and who continue to lead within the organization as we move into 2022. We also presented the Chief Executive Officer and Board Chairs Awards, and as is our practice, we invited those two individuals to the board meeting today for special recognition by you. So I wanted to start by recognizing the 2021 CEO Award recipient, and then I'll turn it over to Board Member Daughtry to present the Board Chairs Award. I'm honored to present my 2021 CEO Award to Robert Gaines, who is one of our coach operators. And here's a picture of Robert, and Robert is here with us today. Robert is on his third act in his career. He has been a Marine Corps officer. He has been a police officer, and he is now a coach operator and a union steward here with Local 1576. So he leads by example every day, and he also works in service of his coworkers and his partners across the agency. He's a notable leader in that he works with management to help employees improve, to coach up his fellow employees, serves as a role model every day to help community transit coach operators reach their potential and be the best possible ambassadors they can be for the organization out in the community. So Robert, over the course of his career, has served his community. He served his country on both coasts in Florida and now here in the Pacific Northwest. He's got more grandchildren than you could probably count, but he's still doing it every day here at Community Transit to keep our service running and running well. So I want to recognize him for his efforts in general, I want to express gratitude for his service and especially to thank him for his leadership during the pandemic as we come through here on the other side. So, Robert, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to work with you and present you with this award.
Thank you, sir, and board members. And like I said, my motivation for doing what I do is because if I can reach every single coach operator, which is difficult but not impossible, and just impart, just listening, just talking to everyone, I feel like deep down inside, you know, it brightens their day. And the management team here sees that when I'm at Community Transit, the genuine care that I have for all my coach operators, you know, and being a shop steward, representing the union and going down and being with my coach members and guiding them and counseling them is something that I really enjoy doing ever since I've been here. And I want to thank everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So now one of these days we'll be able to do this in the boardroom in person and we'll get a lot more connection and a lot more personal enjoyment out of it. And this hopefully is the last time we'll be doing this by Zoom, but I want to thank Robert for joining us today and saying a few words. So let me now turn it over to our former chair, Councilmember Daughtry, to recognize the chair as the recipient's award.
Thank you, Rick. So one of the pleasures of being a board chair is that we get to have a board chair award every year. Unfortunately, we're doing it during Zoom. We can't meet, can't shake hands, can't celebrate together, but at least we can celebrate that we have award winners that deserve it. And we can recognize them in this small way. And hopefully next year sometime, or here shortly, we'll be able to get to meet them in person and thank them in person. But on behalf of the Community Transit Board of Directors, I'm pleased to present the 2021's Board Chairs Award to Kurt Kruger. He's up there on the screen. He's joined us also. I think I saw him there. Kurt Kruger is a sales and distribution specialist, earned a 2021 Board Chair Award for his tremendous commitment to agency and the customers we serve. Notably, early in 2021, Kurt demonstrated perseverance in ensuring that signage notifying riders about the federal mask mandate was posted at the Swift stations. He was instrumental in working directly with our vendors to develop and test a new prototype that saved Community Transit thousands of dollars over the previous design and vendor. He visited vendors to provide design feedback, tested prototypes in the field, recommended improvements, communicated cross-functionally and openly, and helped deploy the final signs and holders to the stations. At a time when much of our community was in lockdown, Kurt was on site at the ride store, actively finding solutions to help customers who were relying on Community Transit for the essential services we provide. Kurt embodies the Community Transit's core values of initiative and service focused, looking for opportunities to go beyond the status quo, providing excellent customer service and outstanding results. Congratulations, Kurt, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a challenging time for everyone, I know. You know, a person goes through their life routine, conquering obstacles, just not thinking anything about it, and then surprise, people are watching. So I appreciate the recognition. It means a lot. I'd also like to give a shout out to the sales and distribution team who safely and effectively serve the community during this ongoing pandemic. You know, it's a lot of effort went in there. I'm grateful to be part of that team, and we stand proud behind all of the work that we do. So thank you for the recognition. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kurt. And now we'll go ahead and go back to Rick.
Thank you, Councilmember Daughtry and former chair. Thank you as well to Robert, to Kurt, and to all our award recipients for 2021, again, for your service to the agency. I greatly look forward to 2022 when we get to recognize another round of awardees in person at the Cascade Administration Building. So thank you. And that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Councilmember Daughtry. So thank you to Robert and Kurt and all of the excellent award winners and all that you do, and especially over the last couple of years in a very, very tough time to do what you do. So much appreciated. All of you, even if you weren't an excellent award winner, you are still excellent in our book. So next up, we have the system safety and security. I think, Rick, you've got that?
Sure, I'll kick this off. Thank you again, Mr. Chair, as we switch gears to begin a discussion about where we are in addressing some of the safety and security concerns out there in the field. The board engaged in, listened to a lot of commentary and feedback from employees early in the year and engaged in some robust discussion about these issues. And I took the assignment to look into conditions in the field and develop an agency response. We had an opportunity to preview that approach with the committees a couple of weeks ago. And since then, we've been able to test some of our interim strategies and get some initial observations based on activities in the field. So today, we're going to update the full board on our approach overall, and give you some initial feedback on what we're seeing out there as we begin to try to wrestle with some of these issues in a more proactive way. We built our approach around a combination of interim actions to try to adjust and shift conditions in the field now, and also on some longer term strategies as we are in the process now of updating our organizational safety and security plan. These efforts have been led and coordinated by Don Burr, who's our manager for safety and security and compliance. Unfortunately, Don is out sick today with a stomach flu. So Jacob Peltier will be standing up in Don's place to lead the presentation. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're seeing some positive responses in the field to some of the actions we're taking. And I'm looking forward to sharing an update with the board as we go forward today and any discussion and questions you'd like to engage in resulting from that. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Jacob to begin the presentation. We also have with him Mark Holmes, our new Chief Operating Officer, and Jim Williams, who've been leading on the transportation side some of these interim actions, and also Art Browell, the aforementioned Art Browell, who's been coordinating with safety, security, and operations on the customer engagement with the ambassadors as part of the effort. So team, take it away.
Thank you, Rick. So as Rick mentioned, I am Jacob Peltier. I'm the manager of security and emergency management. So I'll be doing my best to fill the big shoes of Don Burr here for today's presentation. Next slide, please. So some of the topics we're going to talk about today is the current conditions and some of the data that we've gathered over the last month. Some of the interim actions like Rick talked about that we've taken immediately to address some of the concerns, and then talk a little bit more long-term and looking ahead as to what it looks like as we continue to evolve our response. Next slide. So, as far as current conditions, overall, our system is safe. We operate 46 routes across our system, and really most of our incidents of behavior issues occur primarily on the two SWIFT lines, particularly amongst the SWIFT Blue line along the Evergreen Way and 99 corridor. As far as kind of some of the intersections that we've had some more frequency of problems would be the intersection of Airport and 99. And so we know that overall, while that is a decent part of our system, that when you look across our entire system, that's a relatively small portion of the overall system. So we feel that overall the system really is safe. At the same time, we do know we've been experiencing issues of people using drugs and committing unlawful behavior on our coaches and at our stations. From some of the data we dove into, primarily that is occurring after hours when most of our commuters aren't commuting.
and during the dark times of the night. We also know, in talking with our regional partners and our law enforcement partners, that none of these problems are unique to just us. They're really something that we're experiencing in our communities and our environment. And, like I tell people, if it happens on a sidewalk, it'll eventually make its way onto a bus. So we do know some of these do make it onto our system as well. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we worked hard on over the last month is to really look into the data. And so you'll see on the graph in front of you, we presented a somewhat similar graph last month, and this expands that to include additional data from March. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see incidents reported on the bus, both January, February, and March. And you can see both the totals there as well as a breakdown by the different routes. On the right-hand side, you'll see incidents reported at stops with a similar breakdown of what stops they're seeing in the date range. And you also see that map in the middle there. And primarily those dots represent kind of some of the frequent flyers as far as areas that we're seeing more incidents at from kind of a heat map perspective. The other thing you'll notice, obviously, is the numbers have gone up between January and March on both incidents at the stops and incidents on the buses. And really that's because we've made a very concerted effort to encourage our staff to really report any drug or alcohol use that they observe in our vehicles or on our property of any type, whether that's cigarettes, whether that's vaping, whether that's potentially narcotics or open containers of alcohol. We really want them to report all of that so that we can make more informed decisions by the data. So what this is really, as a result of the desire to get more reporting, we're seeing more reporting, which for us is really good news, because that helps us understand the scope of the problem better and be able to figure out where to tailor our resources. Next slide, please. This is taken from our field supervisors and some of the observations that they made while riding our coaches. And we can see here, there's kind of two columns there, right? There's conduct, other issues, meaning besides drugs. So the supervisor's on the coach and they're seeing individuals participate in other behavior management issues. That could be something as simple as just being loud or mask compliance issues, et cetera. And in the orange there, you see drug use. That's where they've observed somebody using some sort of drug, cigarette or vape or narcotics or alcohol. And you can see those observations broken down by a couple weeks or a couple days, excuse me, doing some of the emphasis operations that we've been doing that we'll talk more about later. And what this is really showing is that overall, drug use is a problem, but it's a relatively smaller problem compared to just other routine behavior issues that might happen on the system. So the good news is that it's not, not all just drug use. There is some minor behavior management issues and other things that just occur due to the nature of it being a public transit environment. And as noted, this is while they are on the coach in uniform and providing that presence. Next slide. So some of the interim actions we've taken is really to own our space, to make it clear what is our space and what is more of the public space. And that really started with owning our buses through the Blue Blitz Line operation, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail later, but redeploying our existing resources to provide increased coverage at night, made up of service ambassadors and field supervisors on our coaches, and then having transit police focus at our stations to help be able to ensure that we're addressing behavior management issues at our stops, but also be nearby to be able to respond. In addition to that, we've also been working on making physical improvements, particularly along the Swift line. So we've made lighting improvements along the Swift Blue line to include upgrading the lighting to be brighter, to help deter activity after hours, since we know that's where some of the behavior management issues are happening. We also are looking at design modifications, piloting them at Airport and 99 specifically, to see if that results in changes in behavior. That ranges everything from additional fencing around the perimeter, to increased lighting, to cameras, and changing the windscreens to help limit people loitering at the stops who are not using it for the intended purpose of transit. Lastly, we've looked at doing increased removal of trash and graffitis to ensure that people know, if you commit those acts, we're just going to clean it up right away. So it's not going to be a problem, and you might as well move on because we take owning our space seriously. Next slide. So here we are with some of the initial blue line operation that you can see in front of you. And on the left, it kind of talks a little bit about what that was. Multiple teams of 3 boarding our coaches, supervisors, and ambassadors at night between 6 p.m. and midnight, with really a focus along this blue line. You can see kind of the graphic red representation there on the map to your right, which is kind of the area that we predominantly focus from about 148th up north to 50th along the blue line. And at the same time, we had transit police both on duty and bringing extra deputies on overtime to focus at Airport and 99 to help mitigate some of the behavior management issues we've been having there, but yet still be nearby to respond. So we did that for a week, and we plan additional operations in March, April, and May. Next slide. So really the goal and the preliminary observations of that blue line blitz is that really to deter violations that have been occurring on the bus. And we have found that really is beginning to be the case. Observations from customers and employees is that it is beginning to have a positive effect of people not committing as many violations on the bus, or not getting on the bus to begin with to cause violations unless they intend on paying their fare. We've also seen reduction of gatherings at stations, particularly at Airport and 99. We're now experiencing times where staff or transit police will show up and there's not people loitering there who don't intend to use our services, which is good. And we've seen, overall some positive comments from employees and customers being appreciative of the presence that we've been doing. Next slide. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, Mark Holmes, and Deputy Director of Transportation, Jim Williams, to share some more of their observations and some of the data you have in front of you. Mark?
Great. Thank you, Jacob. That was really, really great. Great job. Good afternoon, Chair Marine and the members of the board. Let me first just express how excited I am to be here. Rick, the entire executive leadership team, and the whole CT family have welcomed me with open arms, for which my family and I are eternally grateful. So thank you once again. Throughout my interview process and subsequent onboarding, it became evident to me that the clear overarching issue to prioritize on day one is ensuring the safety of our coaches for our customers and employees. The heartfelt testimonies of our riders and coach operators at previous board meetings really helped to drive this point home. It was with that as a backdrop that I learned of the Swift Blue Line Blitz as soon as I sat in my office for the first time. This was being planned and spearheaded by Jim Williams. In only my second week as COO, I pledged my support to Jim and his team of transportation supervisors, service ambassadors, and our operators by personally attending the Blitz effort and working with them and helping the team throughout the evening. I'm not going to take too much of Jim's time. I'm going to let him just dive right into this. He will now lead the presentation going forward and taking you through the entire process, sharing some of the positive feedback we received from employees and customers alike, as well as plans for future efforts to help keep our buses safe. His passion and commitment to this initiative will most definitely shine through in the coming slides of this presentation. So without any further ado, Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Members of the board, good afternoon. As Mark stated, I'm Jim Williams, the Deputy Director of Transportation. I'm excited to be here today to discuss the effort and observations that we made during our Operation Blue Line Blitz. Before I dive too deep into that, I want to share that this was a collaborative effort between transportation, our customer experience, and our security team at Community Transit. And I wanted to share some commendations to them or extend my gratitude for moving so quickly to implement this operation. So some of this Jacob already shared, I'm going to reiterate, but we set out with a goal to improve the customer employee experience by promoting our presence of some of the key roles we have within our agency along the Swift Blue Line corridor. We saw an increase in event reports filed by our coach operators, which is part of what you saw earlier in the data. And those reports describe that illegal behavior like drug and alcohol use. So we use the time and place recorded on those forms to determine the allocation of the resources. And once again, these reports were a large part of what informed this exercise and why we aim to increase the presence specifically at that time of day and along the Swift Blue Line. We set up temporary assignments to increase the presence and engage the ridership to support our coach operators during the times that they needed it most. On the previous slide, Jacob mentioned that we built 2 teams of 3 that included 1 transportation supervisor, 2 ambassadors. And on that map, you saw the area where we focused the presence of those teams, circling back to time and place. So we were able to board and engage our ridership and our coach operators on just below 50% of those Swift trips that were offered during that time of day. And while our supervisors and ambassadors were on the coach, they observed what you see here on the graph, some ridership that didn't board because they were on it, or were boarded and got off as soon as they saw them come on. And that's what the number you see there. So for example, on the first day of our operation, Monday, 28th of March, there was about 72 people that saw us and maybe avoided us for whatever reason. To the right, you see the trend for exclusions from our transit deputies and the increase there for March. It was a separate but simultaneous activity. And so some of the reasons for those exclusions are bulleted below. The thought being that our presence on our coach helped them get to that point, but that's not something that's conclusive. Next slide. All right, so mentioned that we deterred some ridership, we quantified that, and as mentioned earlier, the efforts from our transit unit, the last bullet, let me catch up here, circling back to time and place, the effort and some of the comments received. I'm gonna just let you read this because we wanted to share with you some of the feedback gathered from our coach operators and our customers. And these are some great comments and reflect that the presence was effective and meaningful to both our ridership and our coach operators. I think before I transition to the next slide, I just want one more time to thank all the teams who supported the operation that got us to this point. We know our work's not done. We're looking forward to doing more. I think that's long enough. You can feel free to move to the next slide. All right, so moving forward, we learned a lot through this experience and gathered feedback from the teams doing the work through our after action reviews. We're including that feedback in the discussions about future operations, and we'd like to plan 2 additional but separate weeks of Blitz in the Blue Line, one for a full week in April, still yet to be determined the dates there, and another in May. And then we're looking to set it up more consistently in June. So what you see here is starting in June, daily coverage Monday through Friday from 4 to 11:30 p.m. The idea of using the same teams. I want to extend a special thanks to those teams, Maurice, Constantine, and Raman Deep, and then the ambassadors who supported us with the engagements, Mario, Nick, Peggy, Gwen, Isaiah, Alex, and Dan. That concludes my comments, so I'll pass it over to Jacob for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Jim. And I echo Jim and Mark's sentiments that it really has been a collaborative approach. And with Jim's leadership and Mark's support, as well as the ambassador program, we've been able to, I think, do a lot of positive steps in the right direction. So on the bottom there, you'll see that we've also increased transit police presence. We've brought on 2 additional deputies on overtime for on-duty overtime from 4 p.m. to midnight with a concentration on Fridays and Saturdays, which from our evaluation tends to be some of the higher activity times for transit police, with more focus at Airport 99, where we've seen some statistical more problems at that location than some of the others. We are also actively evaluating what additional days we may be able to add based on availability of law enforcement staffing, and hope to eventually be able to expand to other days as well. Next slide. So in addition to the Blue Line Blitz operation that we've done, we've also done some additional interim actions. First and foremost, starting with the employee voice and employee support, we really want to make sure that we are understanding the employees' needs and perspectives and taking that into account when deciding different strategies and tactics to take. So to that end, in addition to the weekly meetings that we have with security and transit police and frontline staff, we've decided to do some focus groups with frontline staff specifically. That includes union membership, both from with supervisor union as well as our ATU, our coach operators union, to help ensure that we're gathering feedback on a regular basis and making sure that as we're discussing different ways to help improve the system from a security lens, that we're folding in their expertise. We're also taking on a campaign to really document and tracking incidents. And I think you've seen that in some of the earlier slides with some of the data and the statistics there, and we're continuing that and expanding that. We also, just as important, want to know the customer's voice. And so we've got additional pulse surveys planned with an emphasis on security to help make sure that we're gathering feedback from customers. And we also regularly evaluate customer comments that come in to ensure that we are using it as one more tool to evaluate how successful we're doing from a customer lens. Next, obviously, community partnerships are very important to us. And so using those integrated partnerships and existing partnerships that we've developed during the creation of the SWIFT system, it's very common for us to engage our nearby property owners during the planning process. So then continuing those partnerships and using those partnerships to talk about what more we can maybe do together to solve some of these community challenges. We also are partnering with the Sheriff's Office and supporting them by providing transit police deputies with our Operation Clean Streets initiative, which focuses on Airport 99 in partnership with Snohomish County social workers and other county partners and local businesses to help mitigate some of the issues in that community. Lastly, we're looking at data and evaluating the data and some of the data you've heard me talk about today to look at trends and ultimately develop a security scorecard that wraps up some of that data at a high level that we hope to provide regular monthly reports at the board finance performance and audit committee level. Next. So looking ahead past those kind of initial interim actions, we would continue obviously with those interim actions, but we're also looking at what more long-term steps might look like, such as implementing rules of conduct so that there's clear rules that govern our system. It's clear for customers so they know what to expect, and also what types of things they should be reporting so that we can support them. Clear for our employees so they know how best to address the behavior, and clear for our partners. So we're in the final stages of drafting some rules of conduct, and I look forward to doing that. We are in the very final stages of an RFP process to begin a social worker program. As you may recall, we did about a 2-month pilot with a law enforcement embedded social worker from the county very successfully, and you funded a full-time social worker moving forward as a result of that. So we're look forward to getting that on board once the RFP process is complete. Like Rick mentioned, we are looking at how to improve our security plans to kind of fold in all of these different data points and feedback we're getting so that we can have more of a long-term sustainable strategy to some of these. And we anticipate that we would have some additional 2023 budget recommendations for your consideration, both to continue providing support on the coaches and at stations and to provide a sustainable approach to providing presence. Obviously, there's other things we'll look at as an agency, from service design to equity lens to fair policy, and working through our different departments and regional partners to making sure that we're considering safety and security when evaluating some of those things. And then obviously ongoing communication with you, ongoing communication with our employees about the different initiatives we're taking and the progress that we are making. Next slide. Happy to answer any questions that you may have that I haven't already addressed.
Great, thanks, Jacob. Mr. Chair, I'll pass it back to you with a couple final observations. We set out about 2 months ago to respond to the feedback we were getting with a couple of simple goals. We wanted to make sure our employees felt heard and supported, and also that we could design some interim steps that we could take to try to shift the dynamic in the field now while we work on some of these longer term strategies. So we've been able to test some things. We've been able to see some positive initial results. So I want to emphasize, these are still pilot actions, and that to sustain this level of effort will require us to collaborate more closely with our union partners, and to potentially bring more resources to the table over time. Cautiously optimistic about the interim indications we're seeing, but still more work to do. So I want to thank the team, and that'll conclude my remarks, and I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you, Rick. It looks like we do have a couple of questions. Mayor Derry.
Thank you, Chair Marine. Well, I want to thank Jacob and Jim, Mark, and everybody who spoke and had a hand in this. And Rick, thank you for your responsiveness to this, as well as it's been a topic of conversation at the board level here for a couple of months. Really thorough effort on all of your part. I'm very, very pleased to see that. I'm really impressed. A very thorough effort. And I think it was nice to hear that comment earlier today that sounds like we're already making some headway. I wanted to point out, I really appreciate the 2 additional deputies. I think that's excellent. If we can maintain that, I would hope we could continue to do that. I know there's all kinds of staffing issues in the police world, but having 2 extra deputies, I think, is probably one of the more valuable things we can do. I also appreciate getting management on board, Rick. I think that was really a great thing to do, to lead by example and get management out there and get feedback on what they're seeing and show the coach operators that type of initiative. More attention always seems to make a difference in these kind of things. I'm very interested as a board member in hearing on what improvements we can consider as a board to invest in on your coaches and on our coaches, and also on a sustainable presence in the field. So hopefully we don't, this isn't something we just start and then peel off of, but I think that sustainable presence is a great way to put it, that you had there, Jacob, in your last comments. So thanks for that. And I look forward to seeing what we can do in those areas as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Daughtry. Did we lose him? He's just there. Well, we're waiting for him to come back. I just want to say thank you to Jacob and Jim and Mark. Welcome aboard the bus. You've clearly hit the ground running, and we appreciate that, and doing a great job so far. The one question, I'm not sure who would answer this, but it looked like our incidences, which was a little scary, went from like 11 to 30 to 111, January over to March. Now, is it because there's that many more incidents, or because we're actually tracking better? Because it sounds like if people aren't getting on the bus, or they're seeing somebody getting off, this is good, but why those numbers?
I would ask Jim to speak to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a combination of both. To be direct, we have asked for our coach operators to report more, and so we saw an increase after we did that. We have yet to see the results from last week come to on all the event reports that we collected. So we did get some from last week. My intuition says we're going to see a reduction because of our presence.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to be. So I don't have it yet, but I can follow up with Rick and you later.
Yeah, that would be the expectation, I would imagine. It's just those numbers. Whew, we can't see them doubling every month. Okay, now I'm going to go Chair Daughtry, and then I'll go to Councilmember Daughtry, and then we'll go to Councilmember Schweddy.
Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't find my unmute button, but it works. I wanted to basically ditto what John Naring said when he's talking about the excellent work that community transit's doing in this area. I am a little concerned a couple of different things. I would be remiss in saying that if I did not say that I'd like to see some of the costs that this is bringing to us. I understand you're bringing some things into the 2023 budget. I look forward to that, but I would like to see what our additional costs are now. And I want to preface that by saying I don't care what the costs are. We need to spend the money. Don't let anybody out there in the audience think that I'm a money monger here to try to save money. That's not the case. What it is it helps us make determinations on where our decisions need to go. And if we don't have that kind of data, and I believe what's going to happen is, and I hope what's going to happen is our costs are going to be high now, but in the 2023 budget request, they'll be a little lower because we've got to handle what's really happening. And the other thing that I would like to say is that I think you need to be careful, and I'd be interested in seeing the data, is does this spread someplace out from where we're looking now? So I think it's important to watch the data on all the routes in the area, not just on the Swift blue or green line, and see if any of this transfers someplace else. Because a lot of times these things don't go away, they just move. And so I think we need to be ready for that. And, I leave up to staff on how to do that. I'm not an expert in how. I just think it'd be interesting to see if we see it moving or if we just see it going away. Hopefully, it'll just go away.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Daughtry. Yeah, good comments. Councilmember Schwed.
Well, I will ditto all of them, but that was an incredible report. And it literally answered all my questions that I had before we heard it. And I am super impressed that we were able to do that in such a short period of time. Because when you look at the size of community transit and the routes and everything, and to put something in place that actually worked as well as it did, and that we know pretty much where we're heading. I did have one question with the drug use. What measures do we take when people leave, their needles on board or underneath the seats? Or do we have any protocol for checking to make sure we don't have a passenger set down on a needle that was used in drugs? Because I know a lot of the bathrooms around public things have boxes inside that people can put their needles, but I was concerned about, our coach operators and the riders if there are drug needles on board.
Mark, Jim, you want to speak to the protocols on that?
Yeah, certainly. Mark, I don't mind taking that one on. So we do have a protocol of procedures the coach operators are aware of if it's observed, if it's seen, not the behavior, but the say it's a needle on a seat. So they'll use some tape that's on board the coach to mark it off and keep it from being sat on. And then we'll road relieve it, have it brought back to base, and try to have it removed. That summarizes it pretty well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schwed. Again, good questions. Is there any other council member before we move to the next item? Or any other board members? Okay, well, again, thank you to Jacob, Jim, Mark, and Rick. Thank you very much for not only taking this seriously, but protecting our other riders and drivers and staff. A very important issue. So thank you for really moving fast on that. All right, next up, we have the Everett Link extension. Rick?
Yeah, thank you. It's my great pleasure to introduce my former colleague and friend, Peter Rogoff, and his team. Peter's the chief executive of Sound Transit. Sound Transit's been extremely busy, as you know, delivering the Linwood Link project and also planning the ST3 projects, including the Everett Link project. And with the recent capital program realignment work finished last year, planning work has picked up and moving forward on Everett Link. So we're here to, we're welcoming Peter and his team here today to get an update on all of that and talk about how we can continue working together to integrate our regional network. Peter.
Rick, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. And I'm here with Eric Ashley Vinca, who I think a number of you know. I think he'll be driving the slide deck, and I should warn Eric that I'm probably going to go through the earlier slides rather rapidly because there's a bunch of material in here, not just related to Everett Link, and I see that your agenda has me talking specifically about Everett Link, so I don't want to burden too much of your time. But it does provide some context of sort of where we are as a regional agency right now. Before I plow into all that, let me just thank you again for having us. And it's good to see our former board member, Joe Marine, at the chair of Community Transit. And also great to see Mayor Frizzell, who's one of our newest board members, who has already had to listen to me chat too much of today already at our ridership experience and operations committee meeting this afternoon. And I'll just say generally, I really have enjoyed our partnership with CT over the years. I am stepping down from this position at the end of May, but just want to mention that I really enjoyed working with Emmett very closely, and obviously with Rick, who may be the person in this region I've known the longest, given that we worked together back in DC in the early 90s. It's been very seamless, and you're not going to find another transit executive in the region who knows Sound Transit better, who doesn't already work at Sound Transit. So it's really, we pick up the phone and take care of whatever we need to take care of in real time. It's been a great partnership. So why don't we plow ahead, and I'll just give a little bit of an overview of how we're doing as an agency. You want to just keep going, Eric? I'm going to skip over this because I think you basically know who we are. This is the service area that we serve. This is the goal. ST3 having passed back in 2016. We are learning over time. I think at the time when Rick was a partner in helping put together the plan, we knew it was ambitious, and as we now are deep into the throes of trying to make it happen in a challenging both COVID environment, a challenging construction environment, we're proud to say that it's the largest and most aggressive transit expansion program in the United States. It is. It's actually larger than LA's current expansion program, but there's a lot of audacious goals in it. And we are now in the meat of trying to meet as many of them as we can, as quickly as we can, with some headwinds that I'll talk about in a little bit. Why don't we go to the next slide? This is an important slide because we always seek to, as we extend the reach, especially of the light rail network, to integrate well with the transit partners. What we always say is the transit rider often doesn't know what service they're on. They just want to get to where they want to go. And whether they're on a community transit bus or a Sound Transit bus, the fact that both of our buses are blue and white is enough of a marriage. But my view is, and I think Rick shares this, it shouldn't matter. The goal is to make the trip as seamless as possible. So this happens to be, in terms of the future vision on how well SWIFT and the Link Light Rail network will integrate. I don't know that we're going to have a partner that will integrate better, especially with BRT service. We have our own BRT service that we are building, as you can see, and we'll be working on in the years to come, both along 405, running from the Linwood Transit Center out to Bothell, then down to Bellevue. That's what we call the S2 line. The S1 line will run from Bellevue down to Renton, then over to Tukwila and Burien, the so-called S2 line. And the S3 line will run along 522 all the way out to Woodinville eventually. And that is all about connecting people rapidly to our light rail stations. But in Snohomish County, we will be very dependent on the SWIFT system, as well as localized community transit buses to feed people into our light rail system. And it really has been a great partnership between the planning staffs to start thinking in the future, even many years into the future, to make sure that really is optimal for the passenger. Why don't we go to the next slide? Ridership trends, how are we doing? What I appreciated listening to your safety and security report, because frankly, we're all dealing with the identical issues. And one thing that has been good for us in terms of Sound Transit's experience is right now, even with the extraordinary drop in ridership that was kind of across the board in all services with the pandemic, it is starting to come back. Nothing is coming back stronger than the light rail network. And it's really quite remarkable, because we now, at our most recent count, on the light rail network, are at 82% of our pre-COVID levels. And having just returned from an APTA conference in DC, where we were talking with transit agencies all across the country, no, I don't know of much of anybody who's back to 82% on any service. That said, it's notable what drove that number. I guess this is 83 now. I'm behind on my own data. It was the opening of Northgate, because as we look at it now, it used to be that Westlake and SeaTac Airport were our busiest stations, and we are now at a situation where the busiest station on the system is the U District station. The number 2 busiest station is Northgate, and then Westlake comes in third. So it really has been the expansion that has been powering, doing just as we expected it to do without a pandemic, and that is bringing new riders to the system because of just having much better proximity to it. Commuter rail is coming back much more slowly, and I think a lot of that will depend on, obviously, what is the intensity in which major employers call folks back. Obviously, our Sounder service down from Everett and up from Lakewood and Tacoma, and through Puyallup and Kent, that has been a much more classic commuter style service. And until I think employers are back in full tilt, and we all figure out what the new normal is in terms of commuting patterns, that is going to stay at depressed levels. And bus service is starting to come back, and I'm willing to bet that community transit is no different. It is not coming back uniformly across all routes. There are routes that especially have been serving essential workers that have never lost the kind of ridership that the rest of the system has. And there are also, we've got certain bus routes that are 60, 70% of pre-COVID levels, but others that are considerably less than that. And we have reconciled our bus routes to see to it that we are putting out, even at reduced service levels, an intensity of service to really serve the passengers well, especially transit-dependent passengers. Why don't we go to the next slide? Expansions, we've just got a ton going on. I mean, the goal is to triple the light rail network to 62 miles, and that's in the near term, just in the next 3 years or so. We've got $15 billion in active construction. You've all seen it on the side of I-5 as it relates to Linwood Link and the Linwood Transit Center. But if you were to head south, increasingly the side of I-5 down between SeaTac and Federal Way is starting to look increasingly like it does going from through Seattle, Montlake Terrace, shoreline up to Linwood. And it's really exciting to see. Obviously, East Link is going to be a huge game changer, in which we'll open 10 stations to the east side overnight. It's what I sometimes refer to as the day that Sound Transit will really put on its big boy, big girl pants, because then we will be running 2 lines, but not just north-south, but also east-west, and really creating the network that was envisioned and rejected by the voters in '68 and 1970. And now we're finally getting about the business of building. We just have a shout out here. We do have a very forward-leaning transit-oriented development program to try to create affordable housing in close proximity to these stations. Part of that is to have an answer to the tendency for the introduction of light rail to be a gentrifying force in an area where affordable housing is already, at a crisis shortage. We're really starting to hit our stride there too. We've got a number of multiple hundred units that are coming online. I think the next couple of months at our new Roosevelt station, there'll be 253 all affordable, 100% affordable units, 300 or plus units coming on First Hill. But very excitingly, we also benefited from a $100 million contribution from Amazon to help us get more affordable housing in proximity to our stations in the next 5 years. So that the combination of our program, which largely takes the form of us discounting or frankly gifting property away if it will be used to build affordable housing, in combination with the Amazon contribution is really going to show great progress. We go to the next slide. Lots of construction going on. I mean, the next series of slides is sort of like, pardon the expression, but it's like transit construction porn. It's just pictures of why don't we just scroll through them and we can show you. Well, I'll go to the challenges slide as well. There'll be other pictures later in terms of what we're doing. The concrete strike is now in its 5th month and is really starting to impact our ability to deliver our projects in a timely way. And I've asked for an analysis in terms of what we can tell the public about how delayed we are. The problem is this. It's not just that we are 5 months behind, because we now have across the entire, especially with most of this concentrated in King County, but not exclusively in King County. There is a backlog now for everybody of at least 5 months. And if the strike was to be fully settled tomorrow and everybody came back, it would take a considerable period of time for the whole industry to catch up to what our needs are. So a 5-month strike is not commensurate necessarily with a 5-month delay. I will tell you that our construction teams have been able to do workarounds to the maximum extent they can to build in the absence of concrete. But at a certain point, you reach a state on the job site where you just can't make progress without concrete, which has resulted in a couple of hundred construction workers being laid off. And we don't have a very good fix on when things are going to return to normal. And that's in part, the parties got back together with a mediator yesterday, but no one has reported that as being terribly productive. So this is, we are developing as best we can a message for the public on what we can say about what this strike has meant to our delivery dates. There have been other challenges, I want to be clear, are in terms of getting all the projects delivered in their timeframes. As it happens with these, multi-billion-dollar major civil contracts, some work has had to be redone. We have a garage in Redmond that was discovered to have a flawed design, and thankfully the contractor took responsibility for it, but it does involve ripping out some work and putting it in anew. It requires concrete. We have been able to get some deliveries. We got one delivery for a pour at the Linwood Transit Center from the Woodinville Cadman operation, but the dribs and drabs that we are able to get in the current environment are really nowhere near what we need. This sort of gives a flavor to that. We are now 49,000 cubic yards of concrete in arrears, and that number just grows. We'll go to the next slide. So all that said, Linwood Link does progress. We're very excited about it. You can see it from the side of the road. One of the things I'm sure you will hear, because we hear them, is when everyone sees that major civil construction go up, and then they might actually see track get laid. They all assume that means that a train is only 5 weeks away, and it doesn't work that way. We obviously need to do major systems work and put in basically an entire electrical grid into the system. Building out all of these stations is the equivalent of like building hotels in terms of the complication of the systems that are involved there. And We then need to train staff and make sure that we've taken all the necessary time with safety certification, and that process be done flawlessly before we open it up to the public. For those of you who followed our incident the evening of the Apple Cup, our investigation that I ordered on what actually transpired after that indicated that we perhaps didn't give the time that we should have to some of that safety certification and pre-revenue testing work. And we will not make that mistake again. So we're going to need the region to be patient. Between the concrete strike, the need for more time for pre-revenue testing and certification, and some other headwinds that we're facing, I can't tell you that everything that we promised across the whole region by 2023 and 2024 is going to happen precisely in 2023 and 2024. But we will be communicating that to the public in the coming weeks based on what we can say, based on what we do know at this time. Next slide. This is the construction pictures I was talking about. We just love these things just because it just is indicative of such great progress. The Realigned Capital Program was an important piece of work. I appreciated Rick making reference to it. The RCW requires the Sound Transit Board, when it knows its program to not be affordable, to go back and take measures to make it affordable. And in the case of what the board concluded, they concluded a realignment process this past August, just after 17 months of work. I will tell you that the realignment process started with a concern about what COVID was going to do to our revenues. And like with all the other folks who collect sales tax, and for that matter, motor vehicle excise taxes in the region, revenues weren't off as much as we feared. But one thing that did become very, very clear is that costs were spiking rather rapidly. I just shared with Mayor Frizzell and other members of the board a recent report from the chief economist from the Association of General Contractors, talking about what has gone on in the construction market, and inflation that's far beyond normal, even double-digit years in terms of cost growth, both the labor side because of labor supply, materials, and then all the supply chain challenges. So the board concluded this process, and rather than terminate any particular or put a stop to any particular project, it used a tool that it had used before in 2010 after the Great Recession, and it stretched out the delivery dates for a number of future projects, but also recommitted itself to trying to find the necessary revenues to fill those funding gaps. And we are aggressively pursuing those gaps so we can actually get back to perhaps delivering some of these projects on their original schedules. Obviously, the bipartisan infrastructure law in DC is one of those places where we're looking aggressively. We just got a very generous budget out of the Biden administration for the coming year, where we're looking to actually retire our full funding grant agreements to Linwood and Federal Way early. So rather than getting $200 million in the budget for those two projects and having them pay off $100 million a year for a great many years, they're asking for $721 million just for next year to buy us out and actually pay off the grant in the same time frame as we're building the project. So that's really good news, and maybe that will provide some opportunities. We are certainly looking for federal partnership for things like building up to Everett, as well as West Seattle, Ballard, and down to Tacoma. But the board then had, as part of the realignment process this past summer, established a target schedule and an affordable schedule. And the affordable schedule was, this is when we believe we really can deliver these projects based on what we know currently about their costs and currently about our revenues. The target schedule was the original schedules, and we are moving things through the planning process based on the target schedule, because we don't want to be in a situation where if we do perhaps get a windfall from the infrastructure bill, or we are able to get stronger revenues, or other means are found, perhaps through Olympia, to try and help expedite funding for these projects, we want to be ready to build them. We don't want to be saying like, oh, thanks for the additional money, but we slowed down 3 years ago because we didn't think it was coming. We don't want to be in that posture. So that is really at the crux of what the realignment plan is about. Go to the next slide. This is the difference between the two, what we originally put in the ST3 ballot measure versus what we know to be the affordable dates for delivery and what the target dates are. And you'll see that there's a difference there. And that's really principally about getting down to the difference there. We would still get all the way to Southwest Everett on the affordable. I think that the 2041 date is to get all the way to Everett. It's hard for me to see the end of the slide because I'm seeing this bar here. You gotta fix it. No, it won't. I'm sorry. Try a different approach. How about this? All right, well, that's not going to work. Why don't we go to the next slide after that?
I'll just real quickly say that your assumption was correct.
Just go ahead, Eric. Yeah, this is just more amplification on what realignment was about. Why don't we get to the slides on Everett, since we've taken up a good bit of these people's time without even getting, yeah, it's the next slide. So Everett Link has kicked off, and it's very exciting because the planning process is now getting started. I did submit to the FTA a letter expressing our articulation and plan to bring Everett Link formally into the project development phase sometime later this year, as we continue through developing, and reaching out to many stakeholders as part of the very early stages of the planning process. Very pleased, we have stood up an elected leadership group. We found that this is a very, very useful tool that we've used in other projects now, both Tacoma Dome and West Seattle and Ballard. It's getting stakeholders to the tables early to identify what some of the more challenging issues are going to be. And rather than kick them down the road and have them all come as a surprise to people 5 years into planning, to actually talk about them now and see if there is, even if we can't reach final agreement on everything now, folks will be much better apprised of what the trade-offs are, what the challenges are, and perhaps have begun charting a path to agreement on what the alignment should be, where the station should be, what the different cost levels could be if we talk about them early. So we also have an interagency group where we bring both the cities and community transit and have them regularly briefed on how things are going and get their input. So, and there's a stakeholder advisory group that actually advises the elected leadership group, and they are also being stood up to help the elected leadership group think through some of these issues. I should also say, in addition to Mayor Frizzell, Mayor Franklin is a new member of our board, and a very engaged one. I think many of you know for a great many years, Paul Roberts, an Everett council member, was a longstanding member of our board. A number of times was vice chair of the board. In the Everett city slot, Mayor Franklin has now taken that slot for the city. We, and Mayor Frizzell knows, has heard me say this, we always like to have mayors on the board when we're ripping up their streets, because it really helps in the partnership and work with city staffs and planning in advance, and making sure that the vision of the, if you will, the host city and the vision of the regional transit authority are aligned. And it also enables us to work through problems rapidly, rather than have them filter up over too much time. Next slide. Importantly, as part of Everett Link, we will be building a new operation and maintenance facility for the north, and it'll be a fairly sizable one, supporting over 150 light rail vehicles. The maintenance facility, frankly, has to be open well sooner than Everett Link itself. It's in part is needed for us to store rail cars. But it's also a great economic development opportunity, because you can see these facilities support more than 450 jobs. And, locating a maintenance facility can often be a challenge because people have this vision that, a light rail maintenance facility is going to be a dirty, noisy industrial facility. And when we say that they do most of the work at night, people get even more nervous about noise and light. What we do to try to assuage those, they are really misinformed. And we always try to bring people to our maintenance facilities. We have a brand spanking new one in Bellevue that will be supporting Eastlink. We are planning a new one for which the preferred alternative is in Federal Way to support our expansion to the south. And a new maintenance facility will be somewhere in Snohomish County as we expand to the north. This is basically where we are in the planning process. Right now, you can see we're very early in the alternatives development phase, but we have target dates and plans to move forward apace in the months and years to come. I'll go to the next slide. I would encourage you, there is a ton of information on our website as it relates to the project, and we just keep populating it with more and more information as it comes available. It really is a great one-stop shop on where we are, what is planned, what does the public outreach look like, what feedback we're getting from all of these stakeholder engagements. And I would really encourage you to look there and direct any of your constituents there who are interested in how things are progressing. Next slide. That is it. I'm sorry to have taken up so much of your time, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. And I'll just end where I began, and that is I really have appreciated the partnership with CT. It's really been seamless in so many ways. And I can't think of a problem that has stewed between us and CT that didn't get rectified in like 18 hours. So I can't say that for every entity across the taxing district. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogoff, very much. We do have a question from Mayor Naring, it looks like.
Yeah, Mr. Rogoff, great presentation. Thank you for this update. I was curious on when you list I forget what it was worded. There's like forever, it was 2037 versus 2041. I think it was a preferred date. I don't know, a target date versus
target date and affordable date. Yeah.
Yeah, affordable date I guess I'm just curious what is the intention that it's 2041 or that you're really trying to hit 2037? I just am trying to get a better idea what that's.
So I'm going to ask this, then I'm going to ask Eric to help me on one particular aspect of it. And it's that whole issue of how far north we were able to get before we got to Everett Station and in what year. So we are progressing with the assumption that we, at least for the time being, have a shot at delivering at the target date. And like I said, that is in the hopes that a variety of things can happen. It's a very dynamic market. We were able, as Rick knows, to get some things done quite cheaply in the midst of a very big recession that happened. It's really why we got to Angle Lake as early as we did, because it was a remarkably good bidding environment. Right now, we have the opposite. We have a seller's market, very high pricing, not to mention the inflation in materials costs. So, but that may not last forever. So if we actually have reasons to believe that costs might come down, then we'd have the ability to get there quicker. Or obviously, if we were able to get a windfall in terms of revenues, either from the federal government, some help from the state. We have floated a variety of ideas with Mark Olias, the new chair of the Transportation Committee, obviously, on ways that the state could help us engage in some cost avoidance. There might be ways for us to get back to that target schedule, but we're going to plan the project like we're going to get the target schedule because we want to be ready if we can. But the thing I wanted to ask Eric on is Paul Roberts, during the realignment debate, enabled us to not get all the way to Everett Station, but I believe we get all the way to Southwest Everett just 1 year later than the original date, don't we?
That is correct. And so under the target date, we would open everything all the way up to Everett Station by 2037. With the affordable schedule, we get up to Southwest Industrial, and then the final 2 stations would then open in 2041.
So, I mean, Paul actually did something rather shrewd because he was very at home with the numbers to figure out a way where we could actually continue to make progress and get a lot closer to Everett and serve an important community within Everett, even if we couldn't get all the way there without just sort of blanket saying, well, the whole thing's going to take till 2041.
Great, thank you.
And that might be worth pointing out that initially our affordable schedule had us going to just Mariner Station, and so it was, you know, Paul and our sub area members' efforts to get it up to Southwest Industrial.
Thank you, Mr. Rogoff, for your report. And Eric, great to see you. I know we'll be seeing you here in Mukilteo pretty quickly. Reporting out, I assume it'll be some of the same slides. But any last questions, or else we're going to move forward? I know we've still got quite a bit on our agenda, so we will do that. Again, thank you both very much.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
That's right.
All right. So, so Rick, I don't know if you're going to use the full 3 minutes on your report, but if there was ever a time for a shorter version, this may be it.
Yeah, I try so hard to be brief. And I'll triage my report in the interest of time. There are a few notable things I do want to flag for board members' reference and interest. We do have a little bit of good news on the front of ridership. We are continuing to see steady uptick. And we hit, we're now over 100,000 weekly boardings. We hit 20,000 boardings in a day a week ago, and we hadn't been at 20,000 in a day since March of 2020. So we're seeing some positive signs there. Still, obviously, a long way to go, but it looks like we've clawed back about 30% of the ridership that we lost. So feeling good and continuing to work to communicate with our customers and draw them back. It's audit season. We're about to kick off the state audit. You'll hear from staff about that. That's a public meeting that the board is invited to attend. But the really good news here is we've just completed our FTA triennial review. So every 3 years, the FTA does a review with their grantees of all of our uses and control of our federal funds. And they spent several weeks pouring through the books and found no deficiencies in our management of federal money, which is a fairly unprecedented conclusion. So we are super proud of that. We've been able to show them very clearly how we put all that federal money to work during and prior to the pandemic, and how we're planning to use our capital funds going forward with Orange Line and our other projects. Catherine Rasmussen, Britton Kavanaugh, the PM and assistant PM on finance and administration, just did a terrific job organizing the team. Obviously, Melissa Colley helped out with coordination as well. So really good outcome there, and definitely noteworthy, and I'm very grateful for all their work. We have no more important funding partner, obviously, than the Federal Transit Administration. A quick note on COVID. We had a little bit of an uptick at the end of March. We had a little mini wave, 13 cases. Looks like it was the BA2 variant sort of making the rounds. Nothing serious in terms of the cases, and none so far in April. So we're feeling pretty good about that. If that was our BA2 wave, it was extremely mild. The mask requirement is scheduled to expire April 18th. I don't have any definitive intel on what the feds are planning to do at that point. There's a lot of rumor out there that they're not going to extend it. We are coordinating very closely with our regional transit partners to watch for that decision and to coordinate our efforts in response. Most of the regional mobility partnership participants are inclined to let it lapse and move on. But we'll see what happens when the feds let all of us know what they plan to do. Quick update on the building move. We're getting excited and we're starting the process of moving folks over next week. It's been a long time coming. It was a twinkle in the eye with this board 5 years ago. And we reserved the funds and moved it forward, and Greg and the whole capital development team's just done a terrific job. We got a tour on Monday and it's looking beautiful. The boardroom is coming together. Just heroic efforts by our IT group over the past 2 weekends, getting all of the data center and IT and tech components installed, and tested. And so all of our systems are ready to go. We still have a lot of hardware installation to do, but the back of the house tech is in place. And that was really a critical path item for our ability to start moving folks over. We are planning officially to start the move April 15th. It's going to be a phased move with the number of departments participating. Obviously, we're going to go one at a time. We are planning an open house and a board event in early May, and want to do a little recognition event to herald the move and getting that new building up and running. We're targeting June 2nd as the first board meeting to hold in the new building, and that would be an in-person board meeting with a hybrid participation option. And we're obviously looking very much forward to that. And I want to make it clear that we will provide that remote option for the public, for staff, and for board members who aren't able to be present in person. That's mainly it. We had Coach Operator Appreciation Day on March 18th, and that was right around the time Mark started, and he was here for that. And he and I and many other members of the team spent the day over at Merrill Creek Operating Base, thanking our employees for their work out in the field and recognizing their efforts. We continue to recruit. We've hired 30 employees so far this year, and we're continuing to get real positive responses to our recruitment efforts. You know about the Orange Line groundbreaking event coming up on April 19th. It is turning out that we are going to see a significant turnout. We have FTA Administrator Nuria Fernandez scheduled to join us to celebrate the start of that project. Both of our U.S. Senators, Murray and Cantwell, are attending. Representatives Larson and Del Bene. We just heard today, breaking news, that the governor will be joining us as well.
Wow.
In addition to Senator Leas, Secretary Millar, and Executive Summers. So it's going to be a big event. There haven't been too many groundbreakings since the passage of the big infrastructure package in DC, or since the pandemic started to slow down. So we're going to draw a crowd. We're very excited about that. We'll be in touch with you about plans. You've also heard about the legislative achievements during the short session. DeVore's legislative report is included in your packet. It's very comprehensive. I would just observe that it was pretty unprecedented to see such an ambitious transportation investment package pass and be signed into law in a short session. Chair Marine and I had the opportunity to join the governor about 2 weeks ago down at the Mukilteo Ferry Terminal to sign the bill. It was very exciting. There's $30 million included in that package for investment in our SWIFT BRT network. There's a new transit support grant program that's worth about another $15 million a year to us. It is contingent on providing that youth can ride free. So we are starting that fair policy review, and we'll be bringing that forward for your consideration later in the year. So really exciting outcome for a short session. I would further observe that the seeds were planted for that, over the last couple of years. Our team and with your support, working to engage with our legislators and the chairs of the respective committees to get our issues and priorities on the table when they were we were heard, we were listened to, and our priorities were funded. We're out and about with city council presentations. Staff and I will be seeing some of you as we make the rounds, talking with cities about the 2024 network reboot and encouraging cities to give us their participation and feedback. And we have our next meeting of the Everett CT Policy Steering Committee next week with board members Daughtry, Merrill, and Marine. And we are making progress at the staff level, advancing that work. So last, but certainly not least, we've got a workshop coming up in a couple of weeks where we'll be talking about the zero emission study and also the long range plan update. And we'll be reaching out to you between now and then to prompt your thoughts for some robust discussion at the workshop. We'll be looking for your reaction to some of the concepts we're considering, and we'll get you some info in advance of that. And our Title VI program is revisited every 3 years. And today, April 7th, that program opens for public comment. That'll be presented to the Strategic Alignment Committee in April. I will stop there. I could keep going, Mr. Chair, but that's the highlights. There's obviously a lot going on, and I'm delighted to be able to share all of that with you, and look forward to the excitement coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Rick. Just barely over the 3 minutes. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. Anybody on the board have questions for Rick? I know he's usually pretty thorough. Good information. We appreciate that. All right, we're going to go to our committee reports. We'll start with the executive committee.
Mr. Chair, Mayor Frizzell had a question.
I'm sorry. I'm not showing up on that screen. Mayor Frizzell.
So Ricky had sent us a couple of emails about a coach driver. And I don't know, maybe I missed the last email, but what was her cause of death and how's her family doing?
Thank you for asking. We don't know. We haven't received the official report. And it's not clear that we have a right to that information unless the family shares it with us. Heather was just a delightful employee and collaborative member of our team here. And she was at home and she was off duty, and that's about all we know. So we're working with the family through the HR benefits folks to support them. But they've wanted to keep their privacy. And so we've been respecting that. So thank you for asking about Heather. The moment we have any more information we're able to share, we will do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I apologize, Mayor Frizzell. You weren't showing up in my screen where I can see you, but I have the participant list open, so I should not miss anybody again. And having said that, does anybody else has a question? Okay, now I don't see anybody on the participant list, so we will go to the executive committee report. We met on Thursday, March 17th. There were council members Schweddy, Councilmember Merrill, Councilmember Daughtry, and myself attended. There was an overview of the system safety and security measures, and a CEO report was provided. And our next executive committee meeting is scheduled for April the 21st at 11:30. And we also have a report for Finance, Performance, and Oversight Committee. Councilmember Schweddy.
Hey, thank you, Chair. The Finance, Performance, and Oversight Committee met on Thursday, March 17th, 2022 via Zoom. Board members present was Christine Fritzell, John Nearing, Sid Roberts, and I attended. Consent items, approval of February 2021 monthly expenditures and payroll items B through F on the agenda. That's what my report says, but shouldn't that say February 2022? I'll check on that later. Action items, award RFP 2016-098, Microsoft Enterprise Software Licensing, item 8 on the agenda. The February 2022 sales tax report. In February, Community Transit collected approximately $18.3 million in sales tax revenue. This is approximately $400,000 more than budgeted. February sales tax collections reflect purchases made in December 2021. February 2022 diesel fuel update and report. The budget team continues to closely monitor fuel costs as world events and market conditions have led to significant increases in recent months. Year to date through February 2022, community transit paid an average of $3.04 per gallon for diesel fuel, compared to the 2022 budget amount of $2.40 per gallon. This is a negative variance of 64 cents per gallon. Staff intends to submit a mid-year budget amendment to the Board of Directors with a request to use funds from the 2022 fuel reserve, which will cover any additional budget needs. Diesel fuel contract, a memo regarding the recently approved diesel fuel contract is included in your packet. Transit safety and security update, an update on issues related to safety and security was provided to the committee. The board just heard a similar presentation today. The transit police report for Q4 2021 was also presented. A copy of this report is included in your packet. Q4 2021 financial report. A copy of the unaudited Q4 2021 financial report is included in your packet. The next financial performance and oversight committee meeting is scheduled at 2 p.m. Thursday, April 21, 2022 via Zoom. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilmember Schweddy. All right. Well, we have 6 items on consent. Does anybody, Mayor Fizell? Oh, you're muted.
I have some concerns with the consent agenda.
Okay.
Item number 1, the minutes do not reflect that I attended that meeting, and yet I have a bunch of notes about it.
All right. Does anybody else remember her being there? No. So you would like the minutes to reflect that you were at the meeting?
I would.
Okay. All
and
right.
then also looking at the consent agendas, items number D and E are identical dollar amounts, and I question whether or not that's correct.
Right. I know Rick probably has it right off top of his head.
I'm sure he does.
That's a good eye. I just hadn't noticed that, but yeah, exactly the same. Like that's can't be correct.
Are you an accountant?
I certainly am.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Thanks for
in my
catching
spare
that.
time.
Yeah. Used to be an accountant.
Yes. Thanks.
I don't have a immediate answer for you. I'm going to have to dig into this now. If we want to pull these and hold them, we can.
I'd recommend that we pull those. We can, move those forward and then just update the minutes to reflect that Mayor Fizell was there. Other than that, we can move the 3 plus the 1 as amended.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to move the consent as presented? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, none opposed. That will move past unanimously, which will take us, thank you very much, Mayor Fizell, on both those counts. It will move us to our first and only action item, the award of the RFP 2016-098 Microsoft Enterprise Software Licensing. My favorite IT gentleman, Mr. Tim Krobuck.
Gentlemen, wow.
Being nice.
Vision and stature. Thank you very much, Chair. For those newer board members, my name is Tim Krobuck. I run the IT department, and along with me today, I have Ann Martin. Ann is our service operations and network operations manager. And among those responsibilities, she's probably our foremost expert in software licensing. So if you have questions around this, I'm sure Ann or I can get you some answers. So this is a request to once every 3 years, we up our software licensing agreement with Microsoft. This is the year that we're going to do that. This is a $1 million ask. Not to, our first year will be less than $300,000, and then we project potentially $350,000 in the follow-on 2 years. So this is all being compliant, about being compliant with licensing, and I'm sure all of you have the same similar issues in your shops. Questions with regard to this?
Thank you, Tim. Any questions? Yeah, Microsoft licensing, not like we don't all deal with this all the time. Okay.
I'll make a motion if we're okay, Chair. Marine.
Absolutely. Mayor Naring, you go right ahead.
Thanks. I'll move that the Board of Directors authorize the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and award a 3-year contract to Software House International in an amount not to exceed $1 million for Microsoft Enterprise Software licensing under state contract number 06016, RFP number 2016-098, which includes up to $300,000 for year 1 and up to $350,000 for each of years 2 and 3.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Now I can get my participants back up. I see no hands. All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that will pass unanimously.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Krobach. Great job.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the gentleman status. I appreciate it.
Yeah, will you keep it up?
Okay. I'm working on it.
All right, for the chair's report, we have a quarterly board workshop, which is scheduled for April the 21st at 3 o'clock, which will be by virtual. And our next regular board meeting is scheduled for May the 5th at 3. And yeah, we're getting closer to actually meeting in person at the new building. I know we're all excited about that. I know staff is excited to get over there. So very good. Next week, Rick and I may or may not be going out and doing a incognito a bus ride to kind of see what's going on out there as well. So just can't tell you what day or when, we want to try to be sneaky. But so other than that, that is all I have. Any board communication?
Mr. Chair, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
Well, we're doing a quick review of the vouchers.
Okay.
And that duplication is that Mayor Frizzell called out. It is a typo. The vouchers in your packet are accurate. They are listed on the agenda with the duplication that is inaccurate.
Okay. So one of them is that number and the second would be just a different number?
Correct.
Okay.
We have February 14th, $828,652. We have February 18th, 2.245 million. And then the correct number for the other one should be 3.986 million. So I'm not sure what our proper procedure is here. The vouchers in the packet that were the subject of the consent agenda are accurate.
Okay, so if somebody would like to make a motion to approve the vouchers dated for February 18th and February 25th of 2022, we could do that and move those along today if you're comfortable.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to move the vouchers? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none, that will pass unanimously. Thank you, Rick, for being on top of that and having us be able to move that along and rather adding it to our next meeting. Now, board communication. Is there any, I could go one by one, but why don't, if you have some communications, raise your hand, and it seems like that might be a good way to do it. Councilmember Schweide.
Oh, just a quick heads up. If anyone is up in the Arlington area and going down 531, they did start this week on the construction and the roundabout by Amazon. So just know to maybe have a little extra time there.
Yeah. It'll get worse before it gets better.
Oh, yes.
And what she's saying is stay away from Arlington.
Hey, come to Stanwood. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Lake
I was in
Stevens-
Stanwood last week.
Lake Stevens is still open for business, right? Okay, anybody else would like to, any other board communication? All right. Seeing no other, because I'm looking at the virtual raised hand. If you're raising your hand and you're not on my page, I'm probably not seeing you. So how about, there's no executive session planned? I'm assuming we don't have one, Rick?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Alan. We didn't do anything today that required one. This is good. All right, any other business? Okay, well, we will adjourn until our next meeting, which will be our board workshop. And until then, you all go forth and do great things.